I want to acknowledge how proud we are to be part of this partnership that makes Generation All the program that it's become. This partnership with Chicago Public Schools, Chicago Teachers Union, the Ford Foundation, and the community, we've come together to do some extremely important work, and quite frankly, it represents what the Chicago Community Trust is trying to do across all of its program areas. Our belief is simple. Our belief is that good policy, good programming for our community begins with the community. Community voice, true collaboration, is, again, the genesis of progressive policy that benefits all Chicagoans. This work, again, which we're going to learn much more about from our fearless Executive Director, Beatriz, is absolutely critical for our city. And the Trust, again, is very, very proud to be a catalyst making such things happen. So without further ado, I want to introduce our Executive Director, Beatriz Ponce de Leon, who, quite frankly, I get to see her every day at the Chicago Community Trust. Her and her team have worked tirelessly to make this initiative what it is. So I get to see that up close. And for all of those who've participated in many meetings, planning sessions, know that you just constantly see this group moving, asking, pushing. And without them, without her leadership, quite frankly, we would not be here. Beatriz Ponce de Leon.
I'm a little shorter than Daniel, so I'll bring this down. Well, I can just say, wow, that's like the first word that comes to my mind. Thank you, Daniel, for that introduction, but thank you to everyone who is here this evening. We were comparing this event to a wedding or maybe to giving birth. You know, it's like the culmination of something, but also the beginning of something new. And we're just so, so excited to see the familiar faces, new faces, but really just friendly faces of all of you who are interested in exploring what we can do for our neighborhood public high schools and for the students and communities that they're a part of. So once again, thank you all very much for choosing to be here with us this evening. I want to talk a little bit about who's here tonight. We had over 300 people registered, and we asked you when you registered what neighborhoods you're from and what you're currently doing to support neighborhood public high schools. And I was surprised. I looked through the list. There were 87 distinct Chicago neighborhoods represented. From the W's stood out to me. So it was Woodlawn, West Elston, the West Loop, and Wicker Park. And then we also have people here, or people who registered from 8 different suburbs from around the city. A lot of folks who are interested in Chicago schools and in our students. So thank you. We did ask, what are you currently doing to support neighborhood high schools, just to get you thinking about that. And we heard people say, or we read, you're mentoring, you're teaching, you're writing grants, you're voting in the local school council elections, which actually are happening today and tomorrow, so I encourage you to do that. You're advocating for students. Someone said that they're providing paid internships for CPS students. And then I think my favorite was a handful of people that said nothing, but then they said nothing yet, which was very hopeful. And that's what today is about, is to invite people to really join this effort. We're here to celebrate and to take action. That's what we talked about when we put together our invitation. We want to celebrate our neighborhood public high schools and people like you and others who really work every day to support them, whether it's directly in the school or out in the community or across the city. We also want to take action. We want to begin to mobilize people in supporting neighborhood public high schools and their students. We know that everyone in our city has a part in this. Everyone has a role to play. And so tonight is about inviting you all to join us in whatever way you can as an individual, an organization, or a leader in your own circle. We are looking at why it's important to invite Chicagoans to join us in supporting our neighborhood high schools and their youth. And the point, I think, that we came together around after weeks of discussion is that we want to make sure that in Chicago, our young people have access to a top quality high school education, learning opportunities that are not the result of their circumstances, but that regardless of the zip code that they live in, the test scores they have, or the luck that they might have or not have, they have access to high quality learning opportunities. And we know that doing that and working through our neighborhood high schools, we can help young people feel grounded in their communities, but also have access to the wider community and to the wider city. We don't want people to be isolated in their communities. We think neighborhood high schools with the partnerships and the energy and resources that our city has can be a good place for exploring beyond their community. We also know that our neighborhood public high schools play a very important and special part in our education ecosystem in Chicago. We're a city that has many opportunities for students, and neighborhood high schools have a role to play in that ecosystem. Almost half of Chicago public high school students, it's 42.5%, attend a neighborhood public high school. So they might not be their own, but they are at a neighborhood public high school. That means that our neighborhood public high schools serve the most students. They're the type of school that serves the most students. And if we think about neighborhood public high schools, not only do they serve students, but they can really be vital community institutions. In some communities, they already are. In others, they're struggling, but they can be. They have the potential to be. We know that neighborhood public high schools can provide a place for families, for students, for teachers, residents, community residents to learn, grow, and work together, improving their lives, but also making their schools stronger and making their communities stronger. And ultimately, we know that healthy neighborhood public high schools are critical to the vitality and the prosperity of our city. I want to say that again because I think sometimes we forget that. Healthy neighborhood public high schools are critical to the vitality and the prosperity of our city. Thank you. This is a little bit of a long list, but I think we have to remind ourselves that the students of today are the nurses, the youth workers, the engineers, and the teachers. They're going to be the bankers, the program officers, the entertainers, the childcare providers, the aldermen, the researchers, the community organizers, the customer service reps, the Black Club leaders, the volunteers, the local school council members, and the taxpayers of our city. And so we need to prepare them well. One question I have is, shouldn't our neighborhood public high schools be among the best schools that Chicago has to offer? We think yes. Our city, in an effort to improve education over the years, has really kind of taken on an approach that many across the country have, which was to open new schools and to do that as a way perhaps to have competition lift everyone up or be innovative. Some of those schools are doing really well. We just saw in the news this week that our selective enrollment schools are among the top in the country. We know that there are schools that do serve our students well, and there's a place for them. But we also know that sometimes having many choices, although it sounds good and it sounds like it's the American way, it also can have some unintended consequences. We think that Chicago has in some ways reached a tipping point. We've opened more schools than we have students to fill them, and we haven't necessarily thought strategically about how these schools all work together. And so some of the unintended consequences that we've seen are lower enrollment or declining enrollment in some neighborhood schools. We've seen schools that are being sort of concentrated with there's concentrations of students with poverty-related challenges, other special needs, and we've seen limited investment in some of our neighborhood schools, just infrastructure and facilities, as maybe resources have gone to opening and building new schools. While the new schools have provided some opportunity for some students, we don't have clear evidence that they've really elevated all of our students. So we're not thinking that we need to turn the whole system around and dismantle it, but we want Chicagoans to really consider the possibility that the talent, the energy, the resources that have gone into opening so many new schools could have been spent also to significantly improve our neighborhood public high schools. we also want to look critically at what we've created to make sure that we're not exacerbating inequality in our city, that we're not tracking and sorting students by ability, by income, by circumstance, but that we're really providing opportunities for all students. In order to expand equity in education, equity which is about fairness, not about equality, but about really giving young people what they need, in order to expand equity, we need to make sure that high-quality learning opportunities are available to students who don't have them. Start there, start with the students with the highest need, and that they're easily available. Easily available means that students don't have to compete, they don't have to get lucky, they don't have to travel for 2 hours, but that they have opportunities that are open to them that really meet their needs. I think that when we think about neighborhood public high schools, because they serve the most CPS high school students, and many of them are in many of our most challenging communities, that this is really the opportunity for us to invest in them, to prioritize them as a city, and to fulfill the promise of public education, which is the American way. So thank you very much. As you can see, I saw some of you walking around already. The plan is all around us. You have it in the bags, it's up on the wall, and you'll have the opportunity to talk to people throughout the night who've been involved in creating this plan and this vision for Chicago. So I will talk a little bit about it in a few minutes, but before I do that, I want to just say thank you. And sometimes, thank yous go on a little long, but they're really important. I believe strongly in appreciating and acknowledging people for their work and their contributions. First, I want to say thank you to my colleagues, my team, Abby McLaren and Misuzu Scheck-Snyder. They're around here somewhere. As Daniel said, we have a small team, but we're very productive, and Abby and Misuzu not only organized and made sure everything came together today, but they really work hard every day with me and others to advance the mission of Generation All, so I'm very deeply grateful for that. We also, as a team of 3, can't do this work alone, so we've pulled in multiple partners and consultants, and we have the support of the trust, and I thank all of you who are part of that extended team. I want to express a special thank you to the steering committee. Most of our steering committee members are here with us tonight. This group, you'd be surprised, we started with 41 members, and we were pretty consistent in keeping the majority of our steering committee, unless people cycled out to a new job. But they met monthly, almost every month for about a year, and our meetings were from 4 to 8 p.m. So if you can imagine coming after work to meet with a group of people, some that you knew, some that you didn't know that well, and really begin to learn and grapple with these ideas together. We're just so thankful and grateful for the steering committee. And on that committee, about half were people who are impacted by these recommendations: students, teachers, principals, and parents. And then the other half, people who work with schools or with the city, from universities, policymakers. And there wasn't always agreement, but they learned to really discuss, learn, debate, and then come to a consensus. So please thank you very much to the steering committee who's here. From the beginning, we wanted to make sure that the work that came out of Generation All was informed both by research and by the experiences and the expertise of people in our city. So we have an advisory group of national kind of thought leaders in education and in school improvement, and they were really instrumental in making sure that the ideas we were discussing were grounded in some evidence. I appreciate their role in this process. And finally, bringing it back to the beginning, this was founded in partnership with the Chicago Public Schools, the Chicago Teachers Union, the Chicago Community Trust, and with a very generous grant and support from the Ford Foundation. So I would like to thank our 4 founding partners. We have 3 of them here today. Daniel was here in the place of Terry Mazzani, who was traveling and couldn't make it today. But the trust has been, it's our home, it's where we're located, and they have really been instrumental in helping us to begin to build our initiative. Janice Jackson, the Chief Education Officer from Chicago Public Schools, is serving on our advisory committee. Thank you very much, Janice, for coming today. And Karen Lewis, who was one of the original founding partners, you're the only one of the 4 originals to be here tonight. President of the Chicago Teachers Union and a very strong supporter and advisor for our work. Thank you very much, Karen.